Okay, so for my next 5-minute tutorial, I just wanted to just quickly have a look at power and how we can generate as much force as we possibly can as far as power braking is concerned, with just a couple of illustrations. Now, by no means am I an artist, so you have to bear with me with my drawings, but hopefully it will get the message across. So when we're doing a technique, say we, again, just use a punch for example. A punch comes from the hip, okay? So when we do a punch, as a black belt holder, we come off the hip slightly with a downward motion, like an opposite direction. We then, as we come up to generate sine wave, we bring this fist back to the hip. The hip there, the fist then has a slight lateral motion or lateral movement, which creates this continuous motion, and then it goes out into a punch. Now, when you're thinking about punching a human body, and with a punch, for example, is to cause internal hemorrhage. So say we're trying to punch the heart. Now, the body isn't a flat piece of wood. The body isn't a flat breaker board. The body is undulated. There's different positions of the body. So as we're punching, yes, what might happen is these sort of two knuckles hit the chest first, but the front two knuckles will be the main focal point. That would be the concentration and the main area which the force will be applied to the chest. So because the chest isn't a flat piece of wood, it is sort of in a different shape and you don't know where the person's going to be as the contact is made, it doesn't matter. The fist, in my opinion, when we're doing our techniques, General Che said there's a slight lateral movement in the punch, okay? So General Che says, from here there's a backward motion to the hip and there's a slight lateral motion which lifts the fist slightly, and then it's punching from the hip here and it is going up, right? It is going up if we're going to do a middle punch, okay? Now, if we're doing a middle section punch, like I explained in one of my other tutorials, if we have got an opponent and we're actually punching to the heart to cause an internal hemorrhage to the heart, then it may be that as we go into the walking stance and do a reverse or an obverse punch, that actually as we're punching lower than the shoulder. We're doing a middle section punch. So it might be that with this lateral movement, the fist does go in a straight line. Now, sometimes we're not lucky enough to have a holder that is movable, but if it is movable, then what we tend to do is we tend to get the middle of the board almost in line with our shoulder, so we've got this straight line. Now, to get the maximum amount of force in a piece of wood or a breaker board, we don't want to have this going up. So say for instance, this is the breaker board, or this is the piece of wood, okay? So this is the piece of wood here. So this is a straight surface and it's straight line, okay? It's not going down, it's not going up. So if we're punching and we have the shoulder level with the center of the board, because if you've got a breaker board, then obviously it's joined in the middle. A piece of wood, if you punch it in the middle, you've got a lot more leverage either end, or you've got equal amounts of leverage either end of the wood. So ideally, even if it is wood, we want to try and punch it right in the center. Now, it's still going to break if you do punch it in another position, because the grain of the wood is the same all the way through, unless you have a piece of wood with knots in. So we've got to try and get the center here. Now it could be, so if the center of the board is level with our shoulder, then obviously our hip's going to be here, and we might be punching, so the hip's here, and we might be punching at a slight angle here, okay? Now, I don't know the exact figures, you'd have to bear with me on that, but for every degree of angle from the straight line here, for every degree of angle from where we punch to going in a straight line, you're going to lose power. So you're going to lose amount of power for every degree. Likewise, if you were coming down, it's going to be exactly the same. Because let's face it, if we're coming up, then the energy is going up through the wood this way, as opposed to straight this way. The same as we're coming down, it's going to be going through this way instead of straight through this way. So to get the most amount of power in a technique when we're doing power breaking, ideally we want the attacking tool or the tool that we're using to go in a straight line as soon as possible. So it may well be in a pattern we do a punch this way. When I'm breaking a brick, I may do a punch this way. So if I'm punching level with my shoulder, I'm going to get my fist up level with my shoulder, so I'm punching in a straight line. The same with a turning kick, a side piercing kick. The sooner you can get on this line here with as much distance from where you start going in a straight line, the more power you are going to get. So when you see these exercises where they're doing the turning kick and somebody's kicking over a chair, then that's a great exercise, because what you're learning there is to get this foot to be level with the board, the center of the board, as soon as possible, so you have as much distance as possible to generate that acceleration. Because don't forget, mass times velocity squared, okay? Or half mass times velocity squared. So if we can increase this velocity, we're going to increase the power. So if you double the mass, which we can't do in an instant, then you're going to double the power. If you double the velocity, if you double the amount of speed and acceleration that you can get, then you could quadruple the power, okay? So, just to recap, we've got to try in power breaking, in breaking a piece of wood, in breaking a brick, not necessarily in actual combat, self-defense or a pattern. We ideally want to get the tool that we're using to be level with the center of the board as soon as possible, to enable us to have as much distance between here and here as possible to generate as much velocity as we can to produce the maximum power. I hope that's explained a little bit of understanding of what we need to do to generate power within a technique in power breaking. Not necessarily with a human body, because a human body is undulated, it's not just a flat piece of wood. Okay, so hopefully that's enabled you to understand that a little bit more, and then it'd be great if you could join me to my next 5-minute tutorial. Thank you.